I have anger issues, and there's nothing that amplifies those issues more than dealing with companies that leverage anti-patterns and just sometimes amoral business practices to squeeze a little bit more value out of their customers. And there's few companies that I know of that do this more often than GoDaddy. And many of you watching this will probably have heard of GoDaddy before in some sort of negative light, more particularly because of their abysmal customer service and their practice of poaching domains from people that are trying to search for a domain. As you might not know, if you do search for a domain on GoDaddy and then come back the next day to see if it's still available for purchase, it'll magically be unavailable and hidden behind some multi-$1,000 paywall now. I wonder what happened. But anyway, bad business practices aside, they recently redesigned their website in like the past 5 years or so, and they overhauled everything. They clearly have a much more modern design system, but in particular, their domain search, which I feel like is probably the most value-generating part of their site, could definitely use some work. Particularly, as you can see, I'm searching design here, and a couple of things jump to mind. First of all, this search bar being full width is kind of strange visually. If I want to use the mouse to click the search button, I have to move it way over to the right side of the screen. There's also a huge amount of real estate being taken up by the single.com domain that I've searched for, and it's taking up a lot of screen real estate, like the most important real estate, such that all the suggestions are pushed down to the bottom. And additionally, they're also displaying their suggestions in 2 columns, which splits my visual attention in a confusing way because I don't know if the information on the left or the right is more important, so I'm ping-ponging back between them all the time. There's also some strange issues with the navigation being hidden away, and then the cart is just simply, or the continue to cart call to actions is kind of oddly grayed out in a weird state. I don't know why I can even see this if, there's nothing in my cart to proceed with. So as you can see, the usual, we've got our brand guidelines here, a spattering of blacks and grays, and we've got their nice blue accent colors as well as a secondary accent, a purple, and a tertiary accent, this nice yellow here, which we can use for like a warning, a semantic warning state or something. They're also using a custom font, which I don't have access to. I think it's like a GoDaddy. I don't know the specific name, but it's a nice rounded sans font. So I've picked a similar performant font, a really flexible font called Aileron. I believe that's how you pronounce it. But we're using that on the headers and the actual body text itself, as well as labels, button text, the whole shebang. So going into the live redesign here we've got our reference image and the critique that we combed through earlier. But as usual, we also have these user stories, right? What are we actually trying to do as a user? Like, what's the goal of this interface? And from my perspective, it's to find a new domain name for my business or personal site. That's really it. I want to know if this domain's available, how expensive it will be, how expensive it will be to renew. Am I going to lock myself into a crazy expensive renewal? If it's unavailable, is there an alternative that I can use instead? Now, alternative is a very loaded word in this context, because alternative could mean different TLDs, meaning .com, .info, .net, or it could mean a variation on the initial word that I typed in. So if I type in design, it could be designer.com. So there's lots of ambiguity there, and I think it's important to understand best practices and heuristics on the internet for domain names in order to appropriately solve that design problem. We'll see kind of what we come up with there. But of course, I want to be able to purchase that domain and contact support if I've run into any issues. So as secondary use cases, those live there. So I'm gonna get started here. It's gonna bring me great satisfaction to apply my scrutinous design eye to GoDaddy interface. So I'm gonna be cheesing the whole time. But I'll see you guys in about an hour and a half or so once I bang out this design, and we'll see what we come up with. The first lift I'm implementing here is moving those navigation links out of the sidebar and into the context of the header itself. My suspicion is that they hid them away initially because they wanted to keep users focused on the domain search tool itself and hopefully improve conversions by some tiny percentage. But I think the cost of doing that for, frustration to the user is just a little too high. So getting rid of that altogether and making it simpler. As I'm building out this search component here, I want to talk about one thing that you can do that reliably improves the user experience of your design no matter what interface you're working with. And that is, particularly on large screens, avoiding full width controls when there's an expectation that a user has to interact with them in some way. Generally speaking, if you're expecting a user interaction, you want it to be like no more than maybe 600 pixels wide, and an interaction includes reading something, so reading a line of text. And you just don't want the context of the thing that the user's editing to be in too many places visually at once. So making something less wide solves that problem in a really important way for the user. From the perspective of a layperson that uses the internet, people almost always just prefer .com domains. It's just people associate that with the web. So prioritizing the .com TLD is an important distinction in this interface. Making sure people can only see .com domains with various permutations on the string they typed in is an important disambiguation tool. But in that same vein are other related domains like .net and .co, which are other common TLDs that just aren't .com. With this little recommended tag, I'm expecting that if a user was to hover over this or tap on mobile, it would explain things like, hey, this is a short name, which is good for searchability and easy for people to type. A little general qualitative recommendations like that go a long way to help the layperson just understand what a good domain is versus a super long one like ilikedesign.com. This is a missed opportunity, I think, with the existing UI, where if a user, or if there are several TLDs for a given string, why not just present them to the user as a group and just say, hey, if you are interested in getting this particular string, there's actually 6 TLDs for that string available. So you could get a broader brand touch if you were to select this one, and then just add them all at once if you want. And one of the benefits with shortening the width of your interactable controls is that you usually also have a little more horizontal space to do different things with now. So here I'm adding a sidebar to give the user a way to opt in to just call support. You know, a lot of people that are dealing with domains, they just can't be bothered with the interface. They just don't really understand it and they want to just talk to someone. So they'd be missing sales opportunities if they didn't just give them an easy way to do that. And then of course, showing them their cart. That's just kind of something that's crazy that it's not there in the current interface. Maybe they're worried that if people see the total amount they're spending, they might be less they might be a little more hesitant to move through the flow, but in the interest of just advocating for the user here, I'm just displaying as much data as I can about their purchase and letting them make an informed decision. All right, I think this does it. Yeah, I think I've handled all of the major user stories in a way that makes a lot more sense from like a visual hierarchy perspective. It's much easier to see the domain you've searched, and there's a lot of, I guess, context about how domains work on the internet loaded into this experience. So people generally exclusively prefer .com domains, but they're often interested in getting that .com domain with a variation on whatever their word is that they've typed in, but they're probably also somewhat interested in other common domains that other customers are familiar with. So giving them the ability to toggle between those perspectives, I think, adds an important level of utility to this flow here. And then I think combining domains that have the same text but a different TLD, a different ending, that's really important here, because people can see, oh look, if I pick this particular brand mark, this name, I can have a broader profile of coverage on the web. So I think this is I think this is good. All things considered, like, I know I throw a lot of shade at GoDaddy, but their design system's really beautiful. Like, it's a really clean, modern design system. There's clearly a lot you can do with it, if you play around with it enough. I just think at this point we've gotten to the place where, like, we're just handling things in a much more intuitive way, the way people would expect to consume this kind of data. But hey, I might be talking at my butt again. Like, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Is this better or worse than the existing UI, or is there anything in particular that you would do significantly differently? I'm really curious to learn more about that. But anyway, that's it for me. Signing off for now. Have a great week.